There is a food you cannot eat. Not because you are allergic, not because a doctor told you to stop, not because you tried it once and it made you sick. You just can't. The smell alone does something. The texture makes your throat close. You have tried, maybe many times, and your body simply refuses. You probably think this is a personal quirk, a preference, something about your childhood or your taste buds, or just the way you are wired. It isn't. What you are feeling is a 300,000-year-old alarm system, and it is one of the most sophisticated survival mechanisms ever produced by evolution. Your ancestors lived in a world where every new food could be the last thing they ever ate. No labels, no doctors, no way to know whether the red berry on that bush was safe, or whether it would shut down their kidneys in 4 hours. And yet they figured it out. All of it. Every edible plant, every safe animal, every dangerous combination. This is the story of how they did it, and why their solution is still running inside you right now. Here is what most people assume. Ancient humans learned by trial and error. Someone ate something, they died. Everyone else learned not to eat that thing. This is almost certainly wrong, and not just wrong. It makes no evolutionary sense. A species that learns by dying doesn't survive long enough to pass anything on. If every generation had to rediscover which mushrooms were lethal through fresh casualties, humans would have gone extinct before they got started. The real answer is far more elegant, and it starts not in the brain but in the mouth. Taste is not about pleasure. This is the thing nobody tells you. Taste evolved as a toxicology system. Every flavor your mouth can detect corresponds to a specific category of chemical, and each category carries information your ancestors needed to survive. Sweet means calories, simple sugars. Energy, safe. Salt means electrolytes. Minerals the body needs, seek it out. Umami, the savory richness of meat and mushrooms. It means protein. Amino acids, essential nutrients, follow it. Sour means fermentation or unripe. Might be fine, might not be ready yet. Proceed carefully. Bitter means alkaloids, plant toxins. Stop, spit it out. Researcher Paul Breslin at Rutgers University has spent decades studying this. He describes the human taste system as a chemical surveillance network, constantly scanning every substance that enters the mouth, looking for signals that say safe or dangerous. Your tongue is not there to make eating enjoyable, it is there to keep you alive. But taste is only the first layer. The real genius of your ancestors' poison detection system is smell. Your nose contains roughly 400 different types of olfactory receptors. Each one detects a specific class of chemical compounds. Together, they can identify over 1 trillion different smells. And evolution has hardwired specific emotional responses to specific categories of smell, responses that arrive before your conscious mind has any say in the matter. The smell of rotting meat triggers immediate disgust, nausea, the urge to back away. The smell of mold on food does the same. The smell of something burnt or decomposing activates a deep instinctive revulsion that has nothing to do with your opinions or preferences. Psychologist Paul Rozin at the University of Pennsylvania has studied disgust for 40 years. His conclusion is striking. Disgust is not a social emotion. It is not about manners or culture or what your parents taught you. At its core, disgust is a disease avoidance system. When something smells wrong to you, that's not your personality. That's 300,000 years of dead ancestors who ate the wrong thing, never reproduced, and left the world to the ones who paid attention to the warning. But here is where it gets interesting. Your ancestors didn't just use their own senses. They watched everything else that was alive. If the birds were eating the berries were probably safe. If the insects avoided a particular plant, something in that plant was killing them. If an animal in the forest was visibly ill, you didn't eat what it had been eating. Evolutionary biologist Margie Prophet documented this in the 1990s. She called it zoopharmacognosy, the ability of animals to use other species as pharmacological guides. Ancient humans, she argued, were masters of it. They watched what sick animals sought out. They noticed which plants certain predators avoided. They tracked patterns across entire ecosystems. The forest was a library. You just had to know how to read it. And then there was the most powerful tool of all, other people. For most of human prehistory, knowledge was stored not in books or buildings, but in people, specifically in elders. The person who had lived the longest had eaten the most things, survived the most seasons, watched the most deaths. In every hunter-gatherer society ever studied, food knowledge passes down orally, specifically, and in extraordinary detail. Not just don't eat that berry, but don't eat that berry when it's red, only when it turns black, only after the first frost, only in small amounts. only if you've already eaten meat that day. Anthropologist Kim Sterelny at the Australian National University has argued that this accumulated food knowledge, passed from generation to generation through storytelling and direct instruction, is one of the most underrated achievements in human history. It represents hundreds of thousands of years of collective experimentation and survival. Every meal you eat today sits on top of a mountain of inherited knowledge, so old it predates language itself. Now here is the part that should make you pause. Your body still runs this entire system, right now. In the modern world, that food you cannot eat, the one we started with, fits somewhere in this ancient detection network. Maybe the texture triggers a contamination signal. Maybe the smell hits a receptor that flags decomposition even when the food is perfectly safe. Maybe the bitterness activates a toxin alarm for a chemical that was genuinely dangerous once and is now just an ingredient. The alarm is not broken. It is working perfectly. It is just responding to a world that no longer exists. Nutritional neuroscientist Gordon Shepherd at Yale University calls this the flavor system, the combination of taste, smell, touch, and memory that produces what we experience as food preference. And he argues that what we call personal taste is almost entirely constructed by the brain using ancient pre-wired responses layered over by individual experience. You didn't choose to hate that food. Your Stone Age brain chose it for you, and it chose it based on survival signals that made perfect sense for 300,000 years before the food industry existed. This is also why food disgust is so hard to override. Rational arguments don't work. You can tell yourself the food is safe. You can see other people eating it happily. You can know, intellectually, that nothing bad will happen, and your body still says no. Because the system that produces disgust does not communicate with the part of your brain that processes logic. It communicates directly with the part that produces nausea, skin crawling, and the physical urge to remove the substance from your body immediately. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt at New York University ran experiments where he offered people perfectly safe food that had been shaped to resemble something disgusting. Fudge shaped like dog feces, juice that had briefly touched a sterilized cockroach. People refused, even mocking themselves for refusing. The system overrode the rational mind completely. That is not irrationality. That is ancient engineering. The system was built to be override-proof because false positives, refusing a safe food, cost very little. False negatives, eating something deadly, cost everything. Here is the quiet thing underneath all of this. Every food preference you have, every disgust response, everything you will not put in your mouth no matter how hungry you are. It is a record, a living archive of every mistake your ancestors made and survived, every lesson they passed on, every death that taught the next generation something important. The food you hate is a message from someone who lived 100,000 years ago. You cannot read the message, but your body received it. And every single time you push away that plate and say, "I just can't," something ancient nods in recognition. It has been waiting 300,000 years for you to listen.